At the America First Warehouse. I'm James Justice. We got Stephen Ruth, and we have a special guest in the house today.
Micki Witthoeft.
I know your name. Explain yourself. I'm going to let you introduce yourself because she's a very important person in the whole January 6th movement. I'll let you take the reins.
I'm Micki Witthoeft, Ashley Babbitt's mom. Ashley Babbitt was the American citizen shot and killed inside the Capitol on January 6, 2021.
Yep. And so...
May God rest his spirit.
Since the incident of January 6th, there's been a group of supporters that have been showing up to something called the Freedom Corner. And they've been out there religiously since day one. And this is one of the faces right here that has never turned their back on the movement. And there's a couple other people. You have Nicole Reffitt, and there's a couple other groups that are involved. And this is the main face right here.
We want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. If you want to see heart in a woman, this right here, she has more heart than every man on the planet right now. And we owe a lot of respect to her. We appreciate her. And, yeah, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. You know, we were on the corner for 906 days, and then when Trump opened up the doors and pardoned the Jan 6ers, I would have to say that the D.C. gulag was the last to let their men out. But,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame because these people were so mistreated, and it was just basically our justice system was shattered into pieces when this whole thing took place. And so many innocent people have been locked away, stripped away from their families, their freedoms, and all the loved ones around them for years and years and years. And no justice has been really given to these people. You know, January 6th was a complete setup. The only reason why people were there was to protest the certification with Mike Pence because we knew he was a turncoat, and we knew that he was going to certify the election for the Democrats when it was 100% fraudulent. So millions and millions of people showed up that day to protest the corrupt government that we had and the rhinos that were in office that were trying to basically steal our liberties away, which they did. And, you know, that a lot of things took place since then, and the American people have been awoken. The sleeping giant is awake, basically. And back in the day, in the 1700s, all we needed was 3% of the population. I think we're about at 40% of the population that's awake right now, and that's willing to put themselves on the line for their family. And you know, it's a great time to be alive. You know, we got Trump back in president. He pardoned all the J6ers, and they're out. There's a couple more that are still in the jail, you know, pending state charges and stuff like that, and they're not trying to let them go. But at the end of the day, a majority of the J6ers have been released, and you know, Trump basically served his version of justice towards the deep state by letting all these people out, which I think is a great thing.
Well, I just wanted to mention that her daughter Ashley was a decorated Air Force veteran,
14 years,
and she knew it was important enough. She felt strongly enough that the election was fraud and that it was a stolen election for her to go to Washington and to be there for that event. And she, in the end, lost her life over it. And from what I understand, she's the only one that was murdered that day.
Yeah.
And she was shot in the throat. And may God rest her spirit and thank her for her service. And I hope she's in a good place in heaven right now. But
I just
this
have
is
to
her
say
mom.
thank you. But 4 American citizens died that day.
4 American citizens.
Roseanne Boylan was beaten to death by Metropolitan Police Officer Lila Morris, and Benjamin Phillips and Kevin Greason both went down as natural causes, but they were hit with flashbang grenades because
They were shot in the head with flashbang grenades.
they were.
Because from what I understand, they were shooting at people. They were shooting at their
yeah,
heads.
the police launched munitions into a praying, peaceful crowd, and that is really what began the chaos.
Yeah.
So the public isn't aware of this, but you just heard it. The police were shooting munitions into a praying, peaceful crowd.
Yeah. There's videos that
And
came
4
out.
Americans lost their lives that day.
Yeah, and the videos that came out with the body camera footage just gives you an inside scoop of what was going on, and you see these officers real trigger happy, loading up pepper balls and you know,
Yeah, I
CX
saw that.
gas.
I saw that.
And the stun grenades where that shoots out projectiles when
I
it
know they were
explodes.
aiming at people's heads.
Yeah, they shot people in the face that day, and
Indiscriminately
yeah,
shot at people.
yeah, and that was to basically stir up the crowds that were peacefully protesting. When the videos that I have that I haven't released yet, which will be released in the future, it basically shows all the crowds being peaceful. Nobody was aggravated. I have conversations between the DC police and the protesters talking about how they have their back and that they know that our country is being overtaken by these globalists. And we were really trying to work with the police that day, and nobody was trying to be violent. But you had inside agitators like Antifa and these FBI agents that came in, and there was also militia groups. I counted about 5 different militia groups from 10 to 15 members apiece that were snaking their ways around through the crowd that day, and they were the first ones online ripping the barriers to the side to let the rest of the people in. Now, whether it was done by the FBI or militia groups, I don't know. But I do know what I saw, and I had it on camera when Donald Trump was still speaking at the National Mall. It was 20 minutes before he was done with his speech that I had my video camera and I had a monopod, and I raised it really high in the air to get basically a up-high view of the crowd and everybody around. And when I pulled it back down to review the footage, I noticed a huge, about 200 people breaking off the back end of the group heading towards the Capitol. So I said, oh, I wonder where they're going, and I followed them. And I have all this footage. I haven't released it yet, but it was a complete setup that day. There's no way in hell that a Trump supporter is going to break the windows of the Capitol, because everything that's in that building we paid for, we financed, and we're not going to sit there and break our own money. Where there's some knuckleheads that went into the building and did stealing podiums and stuff like that, which is ridiculous. Yes, but for the most part, everybody there was peaceful, and we were provoked. And, unfortunately, a bad turn of events happened afterwards with the corrupt government trying to set everybody up. But
Well, for a long time, we pushed for that 44,000 hours of missing footage, but, there's enough crowdsourced video that has come out and come forward, and American people are starting to see what happened little by little. But when you're overwhelmed with mainstream media telling you one thing and showing you Trump supporters reacting to their abuse, police waging war on American citizens. And Michael Byrd's the one that shouldn't have been there that day. He's the American citizen that should have been fired. He had an extensive disciplinary record that should have had him fired. He would have been fired from any other police force in this country.
Yeah.
But instead, he's been promoted and done nothing but benefit from the events of that day. And, he actually said, shots are being fired. I might have to return fire after he had used his weapon on my daughter. And it shouldn't escape the attention of the American people that it was your First Amendment supporters, your 2A supporters that showed up there that day, the actual gun-toting populace of the United States of America that showed up there that day, and nobody used a gun except for Michael Byrd to kill my daughter.
Yep. They want to call it an insurrection with no guns, and it's crazy. But
So there was a couple of questions I had that were kind of hard to ask, and the first one that I wanted to ask was, how did you find out that your daughter had been shot?
Well, I was at work, and my daughter-in-law called my boss and told her that my daughter had been hurt. So that was the first information that I got, was that Ashley had been hurt. And then I was in immediate contact with her husband, and before we could make arrangements to get to D.C., my middle son came to my house and told me that Ashley had died.
Sorry.
it's awful.
Has anyone from the government, any of your local representatives or any of your legislators or assemblymen or anybody reached out to try and help you?
No, I was obviously got no response from Nancy Pelosi's office, and Dianne Feinstein's office was very, very rude. Darrell Issa, no support from him, and Peters, I think it was Peters was Ashley's district, but she had a business in Issa. Called my son-in-law later that night, but he continues to call Ashley Bobbitt, and he doesn't even remember her name. So there's less than since I was in DC, we knocked on plenty of doors, so not help from any California representatives. But I will like to give a shout out to Barry Loudermilk, who is actually pushed forward with the investigation of the Capitol Police and their behavior that day. and Eli Crane, who came out to the jail when, when the pardons were given and D.C. was slow to let our people out. He actually came out, him and Chip Roy and some others came out to negotiate with the jail to let our people out. And it took a while, but, they came out and stood in the cold with us. And a special shout out to Eli Crane because he was very present that day for us. But, we really didn't get a whole lot of support in Congress. It just recently became, since the election, more people are on board because Trump's on board. But it was slow going there for a while.
So Eli Crane?
Yeah.
And
Eli Crane.
is he a congressman in California?
He is, no, he's not out of California. Sorry, Eli. I don't know where. I think he's out of Arizona.
Okay, well, we'll plug him, either later on or in the next episode.
Yeah, it was the coldest. It was like 11 degrees out there, and he did come spend some time out there with us, so we appreciate him for that.
Somebody with some heart.
Yeah. Now, I hear there's a $50 billion lawsuit for the J6 prisoners. Have you heard anything about that?
I think that there are some people putting some stuff together, a class action lawsuit. I very much think that they need to be put back on their feet.
Yeah.
There's this time of their life that they'll never get back. And we watched the process in the D.C. courtrooms, and it's very much, they use the term kangaroo court, it's overused, but there's definitely collusion between the FBI, the judges,
absolutely.
and the prosecution. You can see it happen. And not to mention that every person in D.C. is deemed a victim of that day. They consider themselves victims, they're called victims, and they sit on juries in judgment of these men that are supposedly perpetrators of the crime they're suffering from. So it's really a conflict of interest and not the way we do things here in America.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. We have so many cronies in there and fake people that just sold themselves out for money, and went to a couple of parties, probably Diddy parties, and got compromised. And they don't care about the American people, and they're going to do whatever they can to maintain control and power.
Well, they're definitely very much activist judges.
Yeah.
Exercising their opinions and doling out their opinions from the bench. And you see it time and time again because, I did relocate to D.C. and we went to a lot of the trials, and we were lucky enough to have a house that we could, host people in when they came in for visitation and to go to these trials. But you very much see these men be judged on the day on the calendar and not their actions that day.
Yeah.
And the FBI takes great pride in the fact that there were so many guilty pleas, but this should be the shame of America, the way that we do things in our judicial system, not just for Jan 6ers, but the whole plea deal. It's definite collusion to possibly plead guilty to something that you didn't do.
Yeah.
If you're offered, you take a plea deal to 4 misdemeanors, and the government gets to put a nice little bow on it and get their convictions and put their little notch on their belt or wherever they put it. But if you don't, and you say you want to take it to trial, you get the trial. Your numbers get enhanced for not cooperating. And, and just you face decades in jail instead of taking that plea. So, it was Main Street America that was jailed. A lot of these men, most of these men had no prior history with the law, and so. This is a lot of people's first foray into the judiciary system, and it was a special persecution with the charges and the way that it happened for Jan 6. But hopefully our guys will come out and do a complete overhaul of the Bureau of Prisons, which is really just a torture chamber in this country. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. We need a complete revamp. Bring them down to the bottom and build them back up, because everything in our entire system of America is tainted.
Well, I think we need to start with making sure that the people that keep the beds full in the jails are not the people profiting from them.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of privately run jails where investors have a say-so in the amount of beds that stay full. And, the whole system, it just encourages recidivism. There's not, President Trump in his First Step Act was very beneficial to some of the communities in this country, but there's so much more that can be done, because jail should be punishment, but it should not be torture. People should not lose their God-given rights or their human rights or even their basic humanity and dignity when they go to jail.
And even if you look at, was it El Salvador recently, they reformed their entire prison system. So instead of having these guys rotting away in a cell, they put them to work. Now they're building stuff for housing development and plumbing equipment. And so what he's doing with the country, with the entire prison system, I think should be done here. Instead of having people just sit around playing cards all day and getting into fights and participating in gang activity, they should be mandated to go to programs, auto mechanics, wood shop, whatever the hell it is, while they're in prison. So if they got to do 4 years, they come out that much more educated and forced classes. And we should revamp the entire prison system here. So when they do come out, there is hope, and they don't feel like stuck inmates that just got stuck in a time zone for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, they should have the ability to learn a trade,
Yeah, yeah,
whether it be auto mechanics, like you said, HVAC, boiler repair.
yeah. Whatever it is, whatever it is.
One of the other questions I had was, when your daughter left for Washington for January 6th, were you concerned?
I didn't know she was coming, but I wouldn't have been concerned. That's something that would have seemed like something that Ashley would do. And she had been, the irony of all of this is I did spend, she was deployed to the Middle East 4 times, so there was a lot of time that I spent worried about her, but I would not have been concerned about her going to a Trump rally. Who goes to a Trump rally and comes home in a box? And I would not have been. And I thought that, I'm proud of her for going. People can say what they want about my daughter, and I hope that when this is over, that people just say Ashley Babbitt, American patriot, because that's what she was.
Yes.
Have you heard from President Trump?
I have, a few times.
Well, that says a lot about President Trump.
Yeah, he cares.
Absolutely.
He saw what happened.
He did actually. He called into our vigil when it first started. And gave
good.
the guys a message, and then on the 8th, I asked him. He had called me. It was in the back of an Uber. I could barely get to my phone. And in the past, when I have spoken to him, there's always been like a pre-call to the President of the United States about to call you, so you get ready and you're in a place where you can talk. It was actually him on the phone, so it was kind of surprising. But I asked him if he had a message for the guys, and he said to tell them he loves them and keep their chin up.
Wow.
And so 12 days later, he pardoned them all.
Wow, it's powerful.
Very
It was
powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
When he's people always say, promises made, promises kept, and I think that it is something that he lives by, not just something that he used as a campaign slogan, which we see with him all the time. I mean, he is actually such a person, such a man of the people, that he's just a breath of fresh air to America, and not these all. And I think that, the more and more that the deep state's been exposed, because
I was
when
just going
you
to say
say
something about that.
Yeah, when
he's
you-
our last line of defense.
and he's amazing, and the lack of fear that he approaches life with is it's heartwarming and it's encouraging. And I think that this country, I talked about this earlier. This country has forever been a two-party system, and nobody can stand up against it. But I would say that MAGA is the third party, because
Absolutely.
it's not Republican, it's not Democrat.
Nope.
And our Republicans and our Democrats, another thing I've learned since I came to D.C. is they separate by example. They separate us and keep us apart by example, because they can't sit in the same room without calling each other names and it's just such a political theater, because you go to these committee hearings and the congressmen and women come in right before it's their time to talk. They say what they're going to say, and then they leave. They don't listen to each other. They don't listen to the witnesses that have been brought in there. They just wait for their aide to call them and tell them it's their turn to talk, and they come in and they say what they're going to say, and then they leave. I doubt if anybody is going back and rereading all the minutes and all the notes from those hearings, and I feel like if they're going to call somebody as a witness before Congress, that it should be their obligation to sit there and listen.
Yeah.
And if they're too busy, then they shouldn't be sitting on the committee that requires them to sit there and listen.
And they get paid to sit on those committees.
Exactly.
They do. It's really just a show.
It's disingenuous at its face. If you're paid and you're an elected official and your job is one thing, to show up and to be a spokesperson for your people, and you're just walking out, there's no excuses for that. And I think the American people deserve a lot better than that.
And there's also no excuse for almost every member of Congress to know that people died on January 6th and chose not to investigate it, because, no matter how you feel about the people being at the Capitol that day, they're still American citizens, and they still have their rights. And Ashley absolutely had a right to have her death investigated.
Yeah.
Michael Byrd was never even properly questioned. And I just want to thank Judicial Watch for taking up Ashley's cause, and I'm thankful and proud to have them represent her. I think that we also need to look into the deaths of the other 3 Americans that died that day, and even Officer Signick, because they screamed loud from MSNBC and CNN that an officer was killed by American patriots with a fire extinguisher. And then when they retracted that and they found out they were wrong, they said it very quietly. So there's very much a large population in this country that still thinks American citizens killed a police officer.
And he actually died from a heart attack. Right?
Yeah,
Stroke,
absolutely.
serious
Stroke, yeah.
and they should have gotten him help, and his blood is on their hands as well.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, a lot of people do believe that law enforcement died that day,
Yeah.
and they did die, but not at the hands of patriots.
Yeah.
Officer Signick died the day after, and then some police officers, they say, committed suicide. I don't really know the facts on those. I don't know if these were people that were going to be whistleblowers, because after my daughter's death, I suddenly believed this government capable of a lot of things.
Yeah. You can't put anything past the government once something of that magnitude happens. I mean, they've been taking people out for years that have dissenting opinions and that they don't like, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, the military-industrial complex, the political class themselves. It's
Boeing.
Yeah, that's another. When the second Boeing witness died, we all just kind of, they got another one. I mean, that says something about our society.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're so used to people getting Clinton'd that it doesn't even faze us anymore when somebody of a high profile ends up dead.
Right.
The guy's name Sign. What was his name? Chris Sign. He came out with the book, and he broke the story on the mystery at the tarmac when Bill Clinton got on Loretta Lynch's plane.
Oh,
And
yeah.
He was executed as well, and his family said absolutely no way he would commit suicide.
Yep.
But now it's just expected.
Yeah.
And Christopher Sign was a decorated journalist.
Yeah.
And
it's
he
true.
was loved, and he had a beautiful family, loving family, and another one. He was murdered by the Clinton, crime syndicate or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But it is common knowledge. Like nobody gets shocked when Boeing starts killing witnesses, and no one's shocked anymore. It's just kind of expected.
Yeah. It's we have to stop being desensitized to these criminal acts and start really ramping up our initiative against the deep state and their hitmen and just exposing everything. Because what other chance are we going to have besides now that Donald Trump's in office? We have all the key components and key figures that we need in place besides Cash Patel. We're just waiting on that, and then it's a green light. We're off to the races. The dominoes are going to start falling. But, there's no other time to take care of this problem with the corruption in our country and around the world than now. And America could be the example that we need to show the world that it is possible, you can do it, and once the other world leaders see, I messed up signing up with these globalists and the United Nations and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberg Group and the rest of these Davos people, that once they see that they're on the wrong side of history, they're going to come back flying over to our side, but it's going to be too late. But we can still value the information from these criminals that, are jumping off the ship like rats. So when the day comes, Cash Patel's confirmed, you're going to see just how serious America is about straightening all this corruption out. And I can't wait.
Me neither.
I can't wait. It's long
it needs
overdue.
to be done. I know that it's changing slowly in many districts, like our district here, where Suffolk County has since taken over the legislature, and now it's a Republican legislature, but it can't happen soon enough.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to get rid of our governor first and foremost.
Yeah, y'all have a similar problem to us. Yeah, they're just no good. They're
Yeah.
just no good. When Gavin Newsom wasn't recalled, I just, that the fix is in. Because even living in California, I know he's got a support of the elitist, and he's got, the Nancy Pelosi crime family behind him, and it's just hard to believe, even living in California, that people are still voting for him, and I don't believe people are still voting for him.
Yeah, we definitely suspect massive voter
Yeah,
fraud.
Dominion's definitely got his back 1,000%. So
Also, since we're talking about voter fraud, I want to take a moment to mention Tina Peters out of Colorado. She was involved in exposing election fraud and recorded some of the results of the machines and the illegal or the tainted vote, and she still sits in prison. State charges, so President Trump's pardon didn't do her any good, even though it was federal activity, a federal election. She's in her 70s. She's been sentenced to 9 years. She can't come home and await appeals, and she's a Gold Star mom and really did what she thought was right that day, and we need to, as American citizens, stand up for her and get her out of jail.
yeah, we have to stand
Absolutely,
on that.
especially the fact that she's a Gold Star mom.
Yeah.
Terrible. And
It
it's
is.
just more judicial corruption.
It is.
Is there anything that you wanted to tell or say to our listeners in regards to on behalf of your daughter?
I consider the 1,600 pardons Ashley's victory because, I was only in D.C. Advocating for these men because of my daughter's stolen voice, and I'm so moved by the people around me. There have been so many people that have not forgotten the Jan 6ers, even though, when everything first happened, people lost friends, family, businesses. I had trouble finding a place to hold services for Ashley. And we've come such a long way, and that's due to the American spirit and the American people pressing forward and not forgetting these people. And just remember that, America it's more than soil. It is an attitude. It's a spirit. And the people that settled this country and stood up against tyranny the first time, that spirit's still in all of us. And I'm not suggesting a revolutionary war. I just think that, not everything can be your battle, but you can pick an issue and you can fight that, and you can run for local office, or you can, be active in your school board or anything.
Just make phone calls. Even make phone calls to congressmen, your legislators, whoever. You don't have to get off the couch and be outside.
And most importantly, stay aware.
Yes.
You should stay aware and not believe everything anybody tells you, whether that's right-wing media, left-wing media. I think that our hope as a society is, shows like this and a lot of boots on the ground live streamers, because that is the actual news. That's the actual voice of the people, not the people you pay to sit up there behind a desk and just repeat the same, what's the latest constitutional crisis, or whatever the flavor of the day is. So I would just ask people to try to remain and become aware of what's going on around them.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's a necessity anymore for a revolution. We already spoke.
Yeah.
And that's why President Trump is in office.
No.
So
We're gonna be taking a commercial break here in a couple of minutes. So before we do that, I have a commercial I want to bring in, and then we're gonna jump back into the podcast. And we have a January 6th prisoner that was released. He's gonna be on Zoom, and we're gonna pull him up. But right now, we're gonna run a General Flynn clip for his movie. Make sure you go download it and check it out. Let's get into General Flynn.
Considered highly skilled when it comes to intelligence gathering.
33 years in the U.S. Army.
Flynn knew exactly how the system worked. He knew exactly what the intel world had been up to. He understood its funding. They had to get rid of Flynn.
President's former national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleading guilty today to lying to the FBI.
There was a moment where I just felt like I was drowning.
ISIS as the JV team. Do you feel as though your warnings were ignored?
We all knew that he was one of the most respected generals in the military, plain and simple.
Well, in 2012, he was appointed director of Defense Intelligence Agency. He ordered the first audit of the use of DIA's use of contractors. This set off alarm bells.
So I'm in there with these other political appointees. They're all supposed to go in there and tell what they believe to be the truth. What they did was they took my assessment and they wanted me to change it. And I was like, I'm not changing it.
Mike Flynn, whatever you think of him or his politics, did not lie, but instead told the truth. And so he was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
President Obama said, but I do have one specific recommendation. Stay away from Michael Flynn. He's bad news.
I went into the service because I love our country. And I come home and I find out that the worst enemy that I'm going to face in my life is right here in America.
Even had he not served his country, even if he were not a combat veteran, to turn something like this loose on a family, I mean, it's monstrous.
The media was out there in droves.
I went into a very deep depression, like suicidal depression. The only thing that kept me alive was my son.
We always knew that we somehow just had to get through it because we knew he wasn't guilty.
Over time, instead of being pounded down below the surface of the ocean, we started to fight. I'm now above the surface. But I can see the shoreline, and I started to swim.
Are back at the America First Warehouse for the Know Your Enemies podcast, second half. So on the line, we have Greg Purdy. He is a January 6th prisoner that was released. What's up, Greg? How you doing? Welcome to the show. We appreciate you being on.
Hey, Greg, how you doing?
How we feeling tonight?
Good, man. Glad to have you on. So give us some updates of what's going on. Tell us your story so the people know what, about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, is the sound okay? Because there's some music. I don't know if it's kind of coming through on your guys' end.
Yeah, if you could turn his vocals up in the headphones a little bit where I could hear him.
Yep.
And I think we'll be good to go.
Perfect. Yeah. Hey, guys. Hey, Micki.
Hey.
Thanks for having me on. What an absolute adventure it has been. Micki has been on the corner outside the jail for months. And actually, she's been there for years, but I was only in the jail over there for months, and I heard her voice every single night. And, our story before we went to jail, I went to prison with my Uncle Bobby and my brother Matt Purdy. The Department of Justice incarcerated 3 of my family members, was hunting down my father as well, and tried to absolutely destroy our lives. It started a few days after January 6th. And I'll start with January 6th and what happened. We had went there as a family because we believed that there were issues with our election integrity. We wanted our voice to be heard. And we wanted people to at least investigate the election. And that's what we went for. And we went to the speech that Trump gave. It was a beautiful speech. And we walked over and marched over as a family. And all we did was walk through the Capitol, and tell fellow patriots we love them, and tell the police we love them, actually. And all of a sudden, I leave the event thinking nothing of it. I post stuff on social media, talking about how much I love America. And then all of a sudden, the FBI's hunting me down. They're on my doorstep a week later. My mother answers the door confused. She's like, "What are you guys here for?" They're like, "Oh, we need to talk to your sons and your brother." And we didn't know what to think of it. And they investigated us. They deleted all of our social accounts. They subpoenaed us. They did all this stuff. And then a year goes by, and then they arrest us. And we go through the whole pre-trial, all the hearings, everything, spending money. Then we can't afford any attorneys, and we're getting public defenders. It's this whole big mess. And defaming us, the media, the whole 9 yards. And then we go to trial, and we get found guilty. And we can't believe it at this point, because they try to find us guilty of assaulting police officers when we never assaulted police officers. I'm on video camera. I mean, this has been broadcasted on the news. I'm on video camera telling police that we love them and that we're not here to hurt them, that we come in peace. I'm saying those actual words, yet we somehow get convicted of these outright wrong charges. And it was the craziest thing. And all of a sudden, I find myself in handcuffs, and I'm sitting there in jail with my uncle.
Oh,
there was no...
How much time? Yeah. Greg, I'm Stephen Ruth. How are you?
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Pleasure. So one of the questions I had for you was, how much time in its entirety did you end up spending in jail, incarcerated?
I was there for 7.5 months. They were trying to give me 5 years. And I tell you what, we went through horrible conditions, but there's people who went through way worse. The guys who were there in the beginning before me, people who were incarcerated that first year or two. There's guys that spent, 4 years in jail. And they were on 23-hour lockdowns. When I went to the jail, I spent 7.5 months. I didn't go outside and we had rat feces in our food, and we dealt with horrible stuff, but it wasn't even a fraction of what these other guys dealt with. So it wasn't long by any comparison to the first batch of Patriots that went through there. But I tell you what, it was not justice. It wasn't a justice system. The due process was off. The jail treatment was off. The amount of time they were giving these guys for walking through the Capitol. I mean, you know, you had guys there that were antagonized by police officers. Police officers were shooting at them indiscriminately. And they were just, you know, defending their mother, their grandmother, and they're trying to put them in jail for 15, 20 years. People for just walking through the Capitol, they're trying to put you in jail for 5 to 10 years. That's crazy. It's crazy because, you know, it's the people's house. You're allowed to be there. You're allowed to have your voice heard. And, you know, even if somebody did commit a crime, what is that?
Trespassing,
a fine?
maybe?
Yeah, a $50 fine.
Right.
You know,
It seems like the punishment didn't, and even the charges didn't fit the crime. Well, obviously, in your case, they're charging you with an assaulting of a police officer, and meanwhile, you didn't do any such a thing.
Yeah. What I think the deep state was doing was they were trying to make examples out of the Patriots that were on the front lines of that activity, but make them an example to anybody else down the future that wants to step up and has a real heart in their chest that's beating red, white, and blue to go, you know what? I don't want to end up like those guys, so I'm just going to shut up and be silent. And I think it had the reverse effect throughout our nation because once the Patriots of America saw what happened and how the January 6th prisoners were treated, it started a wildfire throughout this nation. And I think that the Patriots across this country and around the world are buzzing right now and ready to start the Second American Revolution and turn this into a renaissance like the world has never seen, like Trump said.
So one of the other things that I had heard early on was that there was torture going on inside the jail to the original people that started getting locked up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There were atrocious, heinous things that you wouldn't even believe. I mean, the guys who were in there at first, they were on these 23-hour lockdowns, which, by the way, were sometimes 72 hours without getting let out. You're talking no showers. You're talking they're taking food away from you. Like you get your tray that's supposed to have all your food on it, and 3/4 of it is missing. You know, I mean, I've got stories. I won't name names for their privacy, but people getting thrown in supply closets and being put on top of you know, the cold concrete, handcuffed. I mean, people getting beaten by the guards.
I heard somebody was beaten to the point where they lost eyesight.
Yep, I heard that one too. Yep.
That's horrible.
You know what's so bad is that it wasn't just negligence. It was the jail attacking these guys, like the jail going after these guys. Like one of the things that I personally dealt with was on election day, the day after election day, they brought in a bunch of people from other units to antagonize the J6ers. People that had issues with people before and they knew would cause an issue. And we knew this because a couple of the guards, because there were a couple good guards who would kind of let you know, hey, this is what they're up to. And they would say to us, listen, they're trying to send these guys in to antagonize them, and they're whispering in these inmates' ears to go start something with you guys. Be smart. And it's so funny because when the jail would do stuff like that, we'd always reverse it on them. So like when these guys came in, we actually ended up becoming friends, and we all actually got along. And one time when there was a small issue, but it was solved, the guards came up and they're like, damn, I wish you guys were kicking the J6ers' butt, but it didn't happen. And I'm like, did the guard really just say that to you? I mean, this is so crazy. You think this is like something out of a movie, but this was the stuff that they were doing. It was so crazy. They wanted a fight. They wanted to instigate a fight. They wanted to make us look bad. They wanted to make us look like we were something that we were not. All we were was just patriotic, loving Americans that just want our country for our kids.
Yeah, that prison needs to be investigated. People need to be held accountable for their actions.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's just mind-boggling to me that you could be held so long and not either charged or given a trial or given an opportunity to make bail.
Well, the District of Columbia operates on its own terms, so it's outside of the United States. It's it's its own little confined area, so they can literally make up whatever the hell they want in there.
Yeah, and Greg actually did. He went pro se and represented himself, and Judge Lambert, I believe he had, and he had said, he wrote a motion, and Judge Lambert said, "Well, that's one of the most well thought out motions I've seen, better than a lot of the attorneys. Too bad it's not going to do you any good."
Yeah, it's horrible. They're all activist judges, and
right.
I wouldn't be surprised if their bank accounts are filled with George Soros money, because that guy likes to throw his money around.
There
and
are
buy off
still
judges.
some good judges here in Suffolk County. I want to give respect to the judges that presided over my case. I had some good judges. I liked my judge in the end. His name is Tim Mazie. I was grateful to have him as a judge. But I know that the judges that presided over you guys were deep state plants. And, and you guys didn't stand a chance of a fair trial.
Yeah.
I think the conviction rate was like 99.5%. I mean, that's not justice.
Yeah, right, that's not justice. It's just bragging rights for the district attorney, and it's not justice.
That's true.
But we see it time and time again where people, even I've read in Texas, people have been executed and they've been put to death by the judicial system only to find out that they murdered the wrong person. And this happens with our judicial system because they just want the numbers. They just want the bragging rights. So they didn't really care that the person they were arresting and charging with murder was innocent. They arrested him, charged him with murder. He ended up being executed. Yep. And then years later, it comes out that he didn't even do it. It was somebody else. And then we saw it happen here with Martin Tankleff. And it happens constantly. I mean, Martin Tankleff did 20 years for the murder of his parents, got out of jail. I think it was the Innocence Project that got him out. And, the government paid him, I think, either $6 or $10 million for the same thing. They coerced a confession. He didn't kill his parents. But this is just a broken judicial system. We have a much lower population in the United States and a much higher population in prison than China.
Yeah.
And it's a broken system.
So how's it feel to be a free man, Greg Purdy?
Man, every day I get more and more used to it. I think now being almost a month out, I'm feeling a little more normal again.
So do you not have any cases pending?
No cases pending.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's a blessing.
Yeah,
so you're free to do and go wherever you want. And you can vote.
It's the best feeling ever. I don't gotta call into my my pretrial officer every time I move outside of the county. I mean, I can and exhibit my right as an American to be free and go out there. It's the best feeling ever. There's no way to describe it.
Yeah, well,
absolutely. So where are you now? Hope Junction?
Yeah, so I'm right now. This current second, I'm down in Westchester, and I'm living in Hopewell Junction right now.
Nice.
But I'd like to get out of New York. I mean, with Kathy Hochul as the governor, doing a horrible job. I love what Trump's doing, by the way, keeping them accountable. I see it firsthand here. I mean, I went down to New York City and I walked outside the Roosevelt about a year or two ago. And, I mean, it was horrible. It was horrible. New York City's declined so much. You have millions leaving the city, millions leaving the state.
Crime through the roof.
I mean, like, New York City used to be like the capital of the world. I mean, Trump made his living out there. He did some good deals. He got it done. Now the regulation and the taxation and just the weight of the government just never allows.
You cannot breathe in New York unless you're paying for that breath.
No,
well, I just flew in from Florida today, and I have to say the roads are nicer, the weather's nicer, and there's a lot less government overreach in Florida. They do have their red light cameras, but those can be, disassembled just like they can here. But nonetheless, Florida definitely is a very welcoming state to patriots. And there's other ones where the weather is much more attractive. New York, when I I walked out of the airport today. I was like, oh my God, it was like 22 degrees. And I was flying in from Florida where it was like 75 degrees. So
Yeah.
Florida's a nice place, especially if you want to experience an off-grid lifestyle. You can pull it off in Florida.
Yeah, I probably have to come down to Florida, come jam out with you guys. It's definitely Florida and Texas are top 2 states, I'd say.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Texas is another good one. Texas is another good one. A lot of people like Tennessee too, but it must be a blessing, and your family must be very happy to have you come home.
You know what? My dad is he's not depressed anymore. I think ever since this whole January 6th thing, he was depressed for the country, you know? And he's just a completely different person, having his kids not under the investigations and in jail, having his brother-in-law back, my uncle. So, I mean, that's the thing I'm most happy for is really my dad.
That's
over
awesome.
anything else.
Well,
Yeah.
shout out to your dad. Much respect and love for your pops.
Yeah.
You know, we're happy to have you back. You know, that's great that you're free of all your charges and burdens and government overreach bothering you, and you did it.
A
You made
fresh
it out.
start on a new life with Donald Trump as our president.
Yeah, it's a blessing right there too.
Yeah.
He's kicking butt. He's doing such a good job. He's always just said it how it is. It doesn't care, just does the right thing.
Yep.
But boy, this term, he's got a special fire.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Yo, he's got his mugshot in the Oval Office, so you know he means business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Greg, question:
Oh,
how old
yeah.
are you?
I'm 27.
You're 47.
Nice.
27.
You do not look 47
No,
at all, my
he's
man.
not
You look like you're like
47.
25.
He didn't say 47. How old are you?
27.
27.
All right, you're
Oh,
the
my
same
Jesus.
age as my son. Yeah, I couldn't even imagine losing my son for any amount of time, you know, over such nonsense. My son witnessed and bailed me out of jail numerous times over my political activism. I couldn't imagine losing my son to political activism. And I don't even think that J6 was much of a... It wasn't really... You were just supporting who was elected president.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that'll come out too. Those investigations are going to come out too.
Yeah, we're going to get to the bottom of everything. And
So when you were first charged, you were what, 24?
I was 23. I just turned 23, and yeah, it was so crazy.
It is crazy.
You
Trying to
see
take
in the
away your
movies-
youth.
Yeah, you see the movies. Oh, the FBI. Oh, this and that, and it's intimidating, bro. It's
Oh, yeah.
intimidating. Just like, damn, I am getting investigated and questioned and subpoenaed and this and that by the FBI. But you know what? You feel stronger too because you go through that. You go through that challenging experience, and now it's just like, you know what? You did this to me. There's nothing you can do to me.
exactly.
Now.
Exactly.
made
It builds
you-
character.
Yeah, it made you develop a titanium
Absolutely.
backbone.
I had a
Yeah.
judge one time say, get your father into court. My father was a joint owner of a property we had to appear in court on. And because when I was fighting in my activism, that was their method of retaliation, was drag me into court on code violations for a property. And the judge said,
Right.
if you don't get your father into court, I'm going to put a warrant out. Your father's going to get locked up. I said, do it. Don't threaten me. It builds character. He could use it. But I really wouldn't want my father to be locked up, but I wanted to call the judge out on it. What you're doing is completely unjust. And the same judge, I'll even say his name, it was James Flanagan, Judge James Flanagan, had already previously been given a letter from my father's oncologist that he was undergoing cancer treatment and that he couldn't be at the court. And the judge said, I don't care. You either get your father into court or I'm going to issue a warrant for his arrest. And that's when I said, do it. Don't threaten.
Wow.
It builds character.
We got about 30
Wow.
seconds left in this segment. And is there anything you want to tell the viewers or give us any updates or how people can support you? Do you have a GoFundMe or anything like that?
You know what? I just want to say I love you to the Patriots out there listening right now. And I want to say, always have your voice heard. Always do the right thing. Always say what needs to be heard. Don't ever be afraid of that. In the end, justice comes up to light. We're seeing it right now. And never be afraid to be an American. Never be afraid to love your country and love your family and do the right thing. Never be afraid of that.
Exactly.
All glory be to God.
Yeah, man.
All glory be to God. Amen.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. We'll have you on again. And
Yeah, you're a
God
good
bless
vibe.
you. God bless you and your family. And keep up the fight. We're just getting started, and we got your back 1,000%.
You got a driver's license yet?
We love you guys. Yes, yes.
Nice.
It's an awesome feeling. I love you guys so much. Thanks for having me on. We got your back too.
No
I'm always
problem,
a phone
man.
call
Thank
away,
you.
all right?
We'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Much love and respect.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Be safe.
All right. All right, guys. So
Good vibe.
yeah, he's a good dude, man. He's a good dude. We're
Absolutely.
gonna have him on again. I gotta blow through some headlines real quick.
He's like the
because,
poster boy for freedom now.
Yeah, hell yeah. Let me blow into these headlines real quick because I'm not gonna have a chance to squeeze these all in, but I want to get the most important topics out. We got R.F. Kennedy confirmed, which is a big thing for the children and the poisons inside the food and the vaccine schedule to attend school. He's going to come in like a roaring lion and go through all of these agencies and get rid of all this nonsense. So look forward to that. I also have a conversation between Del Bigtree and RFK Jr. talking about Dr. Fauci and some things that I don't think have come to the light yet. Let's roll into that clip real quick. It's a report I did earlier. We need some volume. RFK is now put in place. We're waiting on Kash Patel. And then guess what? Everything's being exposed. Check out this clip conversation. Put up the volume a little more. Can't hear nothing. Kennedy Jr. about what Mr. Fauci was doing. Check this out.
Tony Fauci made sure that none of those kids had guardians, which is illegal. And then he hid what he was doing from the boards. He took foster homes in 6 states and he turned them over to the pharmaceutical industry. He made sure that the people who were running those foster homes did not even have medical training. Most of them were immigrants who came from the Dominican Republic. They knew nothing about medicine or responsibilities, and they were sickened when they realized slowly what they were involved in doing to these children, that they were torturing these children. And you know, there's videos of these children, an old BBC documentary that will make you cry. I promise you cannot look at these without weeping. One of these kids, a 12-year-old who's trying to protect the 8-year-old, and he has a tube in his stomach. And he's telling them, I tried to fight them, and this is what they do if you fight them. You can't fight them. You need to just take the drugs. And the kids didn't want to take them because the drugs were making them horribly sick. And Celia Farber, who's this amazing researcher who worked on this chapter for me and did a lot of the original research on it, she actually went up to Hawthorne, New York, to the Gates of Heaven Cemetery. She found the cemetery where Fauci was disposing of the corpses of these children who died in his illegal experiments. She found an open pit. It was actually covered by an astroturf carpet. She opened the astroturf carpet and she saw hundreds and hundreds of tiny little coffins stacked haphazardly upon each other, because these are children who have no parents and nobody was there to protect them. And Tony Fauci treated them as collateral damage, and his objective was to enlarge the markets for these pharmaceutical companies who he had partnered with by allowing HIV, these toxic chemotherapy drugs, to be given to children. And then the next experiments, which are in the next chapter, which are equally horrendous, is his experiments on Africa.
All right, so basically that clip boils down to Dr. Fauci was taking kids out of certain areas that aren't documented. There's no paperwork on them, no parents, no nothing. And they were doing illegal experiments on these kids having to do with chemotherapy. And they were torturing these kids to death. And when they would die, they were using a Catholic charity organization cemetery to remove the bodies. Now, Robert F. Kennedy is the one that said it, obviously. There's another journalist, Celia Farber, that was the one that got into the cemetery and actually has the footage. So that's what's going on with Dr. Fauci. Robert F. Kennedy is the one that wrote the book on the real Dr. Fauci. If you haven't read it yet, I suggest you order it off Amazon. It goes into all the weird experiments he was doing, the HIV and AIDS epidemic that broke out in the 80s that he was directly involved with, the beagle experiments where he had beagles restrained down and let sand fleas eat the faces off these live beagles with no types of medication or anything. For what experiments, I don't know, but he was getting a lot of money from the NIH and doing these weird experiments. So Dr. Fauci is one of the main people that has to be held accountable, along with Bill Gates. Let's roll the Bill Gates clip next. Bill Gates and the Melinda Gates Foundation has been receiving money from the USAID for years, and wait till you hear how much it is. Roll the clip.
So Gavi, that's Bill Melinda Gates started Gavi. This is the Vaccine Alliance, Global Vaccine Alliance. And we look into the books here for the USAID payment system, and you can see just from this screenshot here, Gavi, now this is over several years, but $4 billion the USAID was paying to Gavi, and you can go down there a little bit, another $880 million payment. You see the World Health Organization in there, a little over $700 million payment. So there's a lot of money going to really Bill Gates and the World Health Organization. And it's interesting because as soon as Trump suspended the payment system for this 90-day review and Musk moved in, you saw Bill Gates do a media tour.
Now watch Gates. Like listen to this guy.
So I'm a little worried, particularly with this USAID stuff. My foundation partners with USAID on nutrition and getting vaccines out. And, there's incredible people. They're not actually worms that work there. So, hopefully we'll get some of that work back in shape. In fact, if we don't, you could have literally millions of deaths.
Yeah, so this guy is worried about getting his money back from USAID. $4 billion his organization was given. And then the World Health Organization, which basically he funds, he's a big contributor into it and the policies that take effect. This guy is so busted, it's not even funny. So busted. And he goes into other countries and introduces his vaccination programs, like his Gardasil programs, and sterilizes
that's
entire
that's
countries.
The side effect is sterilization.
And so that's why the show is called Know Your Enemies.
And miscarriages.
These are the people we got to focus on. These are the people that are tainting our genetic lines. Our family trees are getting cut
Smart
down.
dust. We're gonna get into smart dust and nanoparticles next.
Yeah.
That's not gonna be in this episode. I know I promised you last week, but you're gonna have to wait till next week for the smart dust and then nanoparticles.
Yeah. Having Micki here and Greg was too important to not, talk about it and have them on. So we pushed back a lot of content for today, which will be followed up by next week with more. But we're just happy to be here with Trump as president and being surrounded by dedicated patriots and people that have heart.
Yeah, as long as we can keep your daughter's name alive, we're happy.
Yeah, there's going to be no fading whatsoever in her name, and because she is the symbol of all of us of the direction of the country that we want to be, and everyone can use it and to find the courage and strength to make things happen, become unified with the rest of the American people so we can push forward towards the second American Revolution and secure this nation not only for our future generations, but their future generations as well. And that's what needs to be done,
Absolutely. So everybody should know the girl's name once more that was shot at the Capitol, and that's Ashley Babbitt. And we don't want anybody to forget that. And you said there were 4 other people was it 4 in total or?
4 in total: Ashley Babbitt, Roseanne Boylan, Kevin Greason, and Benjamin Phillips.
So 4 patriots were murdered that day. No police officers were murdered. No Capitol Police. So when somebody wants to argue about that, hold your ground.
That's right.
Yep. Hold your ground and know what you're talking about. Study up. Knowledge is power. And the only way we're going to get out of the hole that we're in is through knowledge itself. We have to know who we're going after, what they've done, and expose every single one of them. And once we do that and we're all collectively on the same page, there is not one obstacle, bump, mountain, or anything that can get in the way of the American people.
God's on our side right now.
Yep. And we're going to liberate the world. So thank you for coming on. We love you. We appreciate you.
Thank you very, very
And,
much.
We got your back. So let's go. We'll see you on the next one. God bless you all.
God bless America, Patriots.
All glory be to God.
All glory be to God. Run that outro.
I have another podcast.
Yeah, she's going.
So
She's
I'm
going
gonna
on
grab
next.
a photo of the,
Know your enemy.